welcome to Top of the Hops. I am your host, Mike Riker, and joining me today, I'm so excited. He's the host of the Ultimate Elvis Channel by Leon. It's the great Leon Smith. Leon, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine, Michael. Pleasure's all mine.
I discovered your channel through Brent.
Yep.
And I gotta say, I'm now going through your channel a second time now because I binge watched everything once I discovered your channel because that's how much I love your channel. And I'm to the part of the live comparison series of Why Me Lord. So I can't wait.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that, but I can't wait to hear it again. Like, even a second time around, it feels so fresh to me. I just love what you do with your channel. You've really opened my ears and eyes to the great stuff that Elvis did in the recording studio and all the live stuff I never heard before. I just can't tell you how much I love your channel, Leon. How did you come? Well, my first question would be, how did you become an Elvis fan? I don't know if you ever discussed that with Brent, but was there a specific song or performance that hooked you?
Well, to be honest, I've not on Brent's Elvis Nation website. I've not long had a blog actually. I've not published, which actually goes through my whole journey of how I became an Elvis fan. But in essence, I was about 5 years old. My dad, who is a massive Elvis fan as well, not quite as I think I've overpassed his obsession as it happens. My dad was always my vinyl collector, and to him, my dad's thing is that he always wanted to buy. If he owns a vinyl, it has to be the first pressing. If it's not the first pressing, he's not interested. But when he was younger, but when an album came out, he would buy two copies, one for playing and one for keeping sealed.
Wow.
Both of which he still has. But that was his thing. But it was about 1980. I remember I was sitting in the living room about 9:15 in the morning, and the post arrived, and there was this brown envelope, and suddenly we'd not long had our first video cassette recorder in the house. To show you about 1980, instead of it had big massive buttons on the front and a pop
Yeah,
out
popped up. Yeah, I remember those
on the top. And the kids' programs that I was watching were ceremoniously put off, and suddenly this video cassette was put in. And as it turned out, it was a pirated copy of Elvis That's the Way It Is.
Wow.
Now, I don't remember much about that particular, apart from the MGM line roar at the start, I don't remember very much about that particular morning. However, in the weeks that followed, my dad had a lot of his brothers and friends up to watch this, because it's been the first time anyone had seen it since it was in the cinema 10 years previously. And I remember, although it was school nights, and this would be maybe, I was in my bed for school, and I remember sneaking into the hallway just so I could listen at the doorway, fascinated by what was going on. And that's the moment that I became an Elvis fan. Obviously, in hindsight, I know that's when I became an Elvis fan. It obviously didn't feel like at the time, but ever since then, my Elvis That's the Way It Is, the movie soundtrack and the album and all that has always been my favorite era, my favorite time, and that's what I go to. And then of course I expanded out from that. But Elvis That's the Way It Is, that's where it started, and that's always the thing that holds the biggest place in my heart as far as Elvis is concerned, because that's where my journey began.
Yeah.
If you want to know more about that, go to Brent's website and read the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a great article.
Yeah, to be honest, I normally write, I normally write very matter of fact. Occasionally I'll throw an opinion in here from there, but it's one of the few times when I've written, as far as Elvis is concerned, when I've written from the heart.
Wow, yeah,
and that's the difference with that.
Yeah, my story is similar. As I've said on this channel many times, I was 3 when Aloha from Hawaii came out. My mother was a big Elvis fan, so she had it on the day, the night it came on, which I think it was April at the time, and she said my eyes just became big, and I just started rocking back and forth. And she left the night, and I didn't stop for that whole hour. I just went back and forth, and then for my 4th birthday, she bought me the album. Even at 4 years old, and I just play that night and day. So I've been hooked ever since. I remember people even telling me, "Oh, you'll grow out of it." Here we are at the age of 53. So 47, 48 years later, I'm still one of the biggest Elvis fans around. So yes, that's how it started for me. That's the way it is. Mine's Aloha. So it's very,
once it gets you, it grips you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So how
Yeah.
did you start the channel? What made you start the channel, and how did that come
Well,
about?
well, no, that is a question. I'm now, I think, on my third incantation of the channel,
Oh, wow.
because I learned very quickly and quite um, brutally about how YouTube works. Originally, what I'd started doing, I hadn't long had my copy of the 2014 deluxe edition of That's the Way It Is.
Hmm.
The big, massive set, which is no longer in print, and is like gold dust trying to get an original copy of that. So I had that, and what I also had was a copy of That's the Way It Is, the complete works,
Mm.
which for those who the few anybody doesn't know is all the outtakes that were really unofficially released. So although the pictures and some of it not isn't all that great, and you've got that property of Turner across the front of it, the sounds in mono are not particularly good. So I'm sitting there and going, I've got this, and I've got this, I've got A and B. Why don't I make C?
Yeah.
So I did that, and I loved the editing and doing it. I loved it. It was I really enjoyed it. But then I said, I want to share it. How can I share it? So the first thing I did, obviously, was make up a few DVDs and give them to my dad.
Mm.
And what my dad has in his Elvis room, he has a big white wall and a projector.
Oh, wow.
And that was honestly, that was just incredible, just on that big wall. And it's an HD projector as well, which was just incredible. But then I said, right, okay, so my dad loved that. I want to expand a bit. How can I do that? I said, I suppose I could start a YouTube channel. And it started with that. And then I started to do more stuff like that. And then what happened was I didn't realize how much about copyright. And there was a
Mm.
couple of things that I put up, and I got 3 copyright strikes. Channel went down. But at that time, although I had some subscribers and some sort of following, it wasn't substantial. But
Hmm.
then the second time I did it, I fell foul of some 8mm well, not concert recordings. There's a big thing in Elvis World about that. A few people have been stung with that. Both people that owned it, and because one person basically went out and bought an awful lot of it,
Hmm.
and I got 3 copies. And I tried to reason with the person. Look, I said, it's not for profit. Channel's not monetized, but his umbrage was that Sony, because I've been using the Sony audio with the 8mm footage, Sony were getting advertising revenue, and he didn't like that, so that channel went down.
Wow.
So although I had a little bit of notice, I let all the subscribers know that as soon as the channel went down, it'd be restarted, and that's why my name is at the end of the title, so that when the channel came back on, everybody knew that it was a new incarnation of the previous channel.
Right.
Because I always wanted to remain anonymous. I never wanted my name to be associated with the channel, really, because it was to be an Elvis library as it started to build, where people could go first take to the master live comparison series. And what I'm also in the process of doing now is I'm starting to load up all the masters with lyrics, but those will be those will be loaded up. Those will be uploaded without any ceremony. It'll just be, I won't be announcing it. They'll just come up in the background. They'll originally be unlisted, and then I'll just unlist them at some point so that they're there. So if people want to, because you can see the masters anywhere, but I want a complete library. I want a
Right.
one-stop place where people can go and just keep Elvis's legacy alive and just watch whatever they want to watch. So it started off after that as with the rare live, with the rare gems, all those one-off performances. Then first time performed
Yeah.
live, last time performed live, and then I got to an impasse, and I'm going, well, where do I go now?
Right.
Then the first take to the master came to me. The live comparison series came to me, and so first take to the master is and live comparison series are basically the focus now. Because there's 126 volumes of the live comparison series done, those are now less frequent because I've done every song that Elvis has done live at least once.
Right.
So it's now it's laser focus areas now. So for example, in a couple of weeks, the next live comparison series that come up will be I'm Leaving from Tahoe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it'll be all the Tahoe versions of I'm Leaving. And that comes up in a fortnight. So
Yeah.
that's what that's what behind the channel, and that's how I'm hoping to grow the channel in the future, Michael.
Yeah, and like I said, if you're an Elvis fan, you've not visited this channel, it's incredible. It's like I said, it's opened my eyes and ears to so many things. And your live comparison series is great. Like, you had like Suspicious Minds, and like you said, I think in the comment section, you could have done two, three volumes, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of Suspicious Minds in a live
Yeah,
comparison series because there's so much out there. And sometimes you get complaints, oh, where's the Aloha one? Well, we've heard that so many times. It was nice
yeah,
to hear, a version, let's say 1970 in Portland or
yeah,
somewhere like that. I've never heard those versions before, so
yeah.
I love it. It's great.
But that's what it's there for. I've always I'll try to describe it now. It's a place, a library where you can go and immerse yourself in the flowers.
Yeah,
And that's the whole point. I mean, it's not monetized. It's a hobby. That's all it
right.
is. There's no, I don't make anything off it. And it's just, I really enjoy when I see a video go up and I see the views go up on it. Then, and to be honest, Michael, it quite something. It never ceases to amaze me. You put a video up and you think, right, this is going to be really, people are going to really take to this, and the viewing figures aren't quite what you expect. And then you put one up and you're okay, and suddenly, bang.
But give me an
Like
example. Like, is your one example?
Sylvia.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, Sylvia. That was only about a couple of months ago. I put that up, and I thought, well, Sylvia, very obscure
Yeah.
album track, from Elvis. Now I went, okay, first take to the master, and bang, within about a week, it was at 7,500 views. I honestly couldn't believe it. I just didn't expect it. And then you
Yeah.
put up something like I've Lost You, and it's slow. So that's a bit. That's the way it is. It's on That's the way it is album. It was a hit. Not very a lot slower.
Is it because maybe people have heard a lot of the versions of I've Lost You and maybe not enough of Sylvia? Could that be it? Or
It could be, or as I discovered when, remember when both of us started becoming Elvis fans, there was no social media,
right.
so only fan publications essentially were the only way that we could get our information about what was popular and what wasn't. But even then, you're hostage to the opinion of the person who's actually writing the piece.
Hmm.
And it was only when I started, I joined Facebook and started doing the channel, that I realised just how popular Just Pretend was
Right.
within the. But now again, an obscure album track. It's
Yeah.
not a hit, yet it's absolutely adored, and I
Hmm.
understand why. I mean, I love it myself, but that's the sort of thing when you don't realise, and you think it's only when you upload the track or you have discussions with people that you realise that a song is more popular than you might have thought it was.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. Yeah.
so
It's funny
that's the
you
way to
say,
describe
but
it.
yeah, it's funny you say about social media. I joked with Brent once. Like Brent was the first Elvis friend I ever had. Because
Yeah,
like I was the outcast, and everybody was listening to rock and roll in the late '70s, early '80s, and I was still listening to Elvis, and like my friends were like, "Why are you listening to that stuff? That stuff is out of date." I'm like, "No, not to me, it isn't." So,
yeah.
like I said to Brent, you're my first Elvis friend. So, at the age of 50, it's funny that that came about. But one of the things I did love about, and I wish it was still on, and I'm sure it's because of the copyright. That
Mhm.
series you did with Brent on That's the Way It Is, when you went through every show and broke down, you do like 3 or 4 songs, and then you would break it down. It was just, I, if there was an award for a YouTube series, that one should have gotten an award because that series was incredible, Leon.
Well, Brent is working on that.
Okay, good,
He's remastering it, re-editing it.
great.
I've seen some of the work of what he's done so far, um, and he's going to find a way of getting it out there.
It's awesome to hear.
If YouTube will take it, that's where it will be. If it won't, then he'll find an alternative, whether it be Google Drive or whatever.
Right.
He doesn't want. I'd started up a Patreon page, only very recently, for stuff that I can't get onto YouTube.
Good.
Basically, that's all it's there for. Um,
Yeah, because that
but
needs to be seen, Leon. That series was just tremendous, and the way
oh
you guys
well,
broke it down was
yes,
awesome.
exactly. But what Brent doesn't want to do is put it on somewhere where it's going to cost anybody anything to watch it, and quite rightly so. So
Right.
he wants to find a way of doing it, of having it free to air, basically. So he's working on remastering it all, and it's a labour of love because he sees that series of That's the Way It Is the same way that you do. He
Mhm.
sees it as the best work that him and I have done together.
No question.
And well, that's the bar anyway. If we can better that, great. But that's where the bar's set. And I know that Brent and myself, I know we're both very proud of that. but he wants to make it as good as it can possibly be for that reason. So it's going to take him a bit of time to work all the way through it. So it will come back.
Oh, that's great.
It's just when and how. That's the thing.
That is great to hear. Like I said, I love that series so much, so I can't wait to see that in the edited form. That's awesome. So we had a little meeting before the show, and Leon said that he doesn't drink. The last time he drank was at his wedding. So I am going to have a little beer. It's 11:20 in the morning here in New York, but it's okay. It's almost 12 o'clock. So I'm going to have a little beer called Little Gushy. So
Lovely.
it's an IPA. It's made with orange puree. So I like the fruit flavored beers myself. I like the taste of it. So this pours out very smooth, very creamy. Um, an IPA is usually very citrusy. So this has got you can tell right away how smooth it is. And just the smell of it. Oh yeah, it smells like orange juice. So it's still morning. So this will be like a screwdriver. So Leon, here's to you. Thank you so much for joining me today. And it tastes like a screwdriver almost. That's very good.
Yeah.
So I got this idea for our top five through the blog of Brent.
Yes.
I think it was a week or two ago. He put up his top five favorite opening tracks of an Elvis album. So I figured, oh wow, let's do a top five. So I wanted to get you on to do this. So we'll start with you at number five. Come to me, Leon. What's your number five?
Number five is Mean Woman Blues from
Great
the
one.
Loving You soundtrack. Obviously, I've told my story about how that's the way it has got my Elvis journey started. So 69 through 70, 71, 72 is kind of my favorite era, 70s generally as well. So the 50s, it took me longer in my Elvis journey to discover Elvis in the 50s. Most people, I think it tends to be the other way around. But this was different because the movies had always been playing in the house with my dad, with my dad being an Elvis fan. So the movies were always on, and there's something about that scene that I really like. I think when I saw Top Secret with Val Kilmer,
Oh, yes.
they kind of parody
That's
that scene as well, and I just think it's well done. It's good to see. It's just the way like he gets recognized, and then suddenly goes to the jukebox, and suddenly it just kicks into it. So yeah, that's the reason that I really like that. When it was quite a challenge actually when you actually said to me about how the album openers. I thought, oh, this will be easy, and then then when I looked at it, I went, oh no, see, that is a bit more complicated,
it
because
is.
you're then restricted to only the album openers, because your favorite songs might be immersed deeper into the album.
Right.
So again, I'm looking back and I'm looking at the albums and I'm going, right, okay, but I almost completely forgot about Mean Women Blues. Honestly, I really almost forgot about it. And I'll tell you a story about Mean Women Blues as well. When I was putting one of the early projects I did on the channel was re-editing the audio from the movie songs, and I wanted to make sure I got the right ones for that. But the thing is that the version that's on the movie is a kind of it's a kind of hybrid of bits and pieces of the song. So that was really a bit of a challenge to try and put that together.
Sure.
But what that also did was it gave me a great appreciation of how good Elvis is when he's singing that song, because what you actually get from the audio that you don't quite get from watching it is the menace when Elvis is singing it. There's
Yeah.
real menace in that
Growling.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. You're right.
it really does. So that's why I got to Mean Women Blues. I said, right, okay, so at least then I was glad, because it was a toss up between that and King Creole, and I'm going, King Creole's, it's a bit obvious.
I know. I
It's a
know.
bit obvious.
It
It's a bit
is.
obvious. It's a
Yeah.
bit obvious.
It's funny when I was putting my list together, Leon. So I did it a little differently from me. So when I think of like an opening track, I think of just it sets the tone of the entire album,
Mhm.
for me. So there are some songs in my top five that are not some of my favorite songs. I actually think I'll give you an example. Inherit the Wind's not in my top five, but it's in my maybe my top 10 songs of all time of Elvis
Mhm.
that he ever did. I just don't think, for me, that that song is a great opening track. I'm the type of person, I like that track to be like Mean Woman Blues, like blast
Mhm.
off. Let's get ready. Let's set the tone. Let's get
Yeah.
into the album for me. That's why I took this a little bit because I thought it was a little bit too easy to just come up with five of my favorite top opening songs. So I made it a little difficult for myself. Uh, and that's what takes me to my number five, because I would put this song as one of my favorite songs, but I thought it definitely set the tone for the album, and especially for the time of the album too. And that is from Elvis's Back, Make Me Know It. I just love it. Was kind of like he took it, kind of sounded like a hybrid of the 50s into the 60s almost, that song. It was like a little pop, a little rock, and it was like, okay, this is and the sound was, especially if you haven't heard Elvis in a couple of years, oh, this is a little different. This is a little bit more mature Elvis now.
Mhm.
So I think the song is a lot of fun. Like I said, his voice sounds great. You can tell he's having a good time, and it also tells you, hey, I'm back, guys.
Yeah.
That's why like I said, it's not my one of my favorite songs, and I could pick like five or six other songs from that album that I like better. But I thought it
Mhm.
was a great start for that album to have "Make Me Know It" on there. That's why it's my number five.
Yeah, yeah. It's to me, it was one that I did consider. Make Me Know. I really did. I love the piano. I mean, that piano intro is just
Yeah.
just brilliant because it really sets the mood for that. But the reason I didn't go with Make Me Know It is probably one of the reasons that you've set out, because I think there are far better tracks on that album.
Yes.
And I felt that I would have been doing a disservice to Elvis's Back by selecting that. But although as we go forward the list, I'll kind of that will sound a little bit hypocritical as we go forward. But that was definitely in my thinking when I bypassed Make Me Know It.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be hypocritical too because, like I said, I want a fast song to start the album, and once we get closer to the top, you'll see that that's one of them is not like that. So yeah, so definitely. So all right, number four, what we got, Leon?
Well, for number four, I have to go to 1971 and He Touched Me. Absolutely outstanding vocal. I have a few problems with the It Touched Me album, with just basically what's on it and what's not on it. I think for example, you have Miracle of the Rosary on Elvis Now, and you have Here's My Everything, which is just a rip off of
Great
There
point.
Goes My Everything.
Yeah.
Or you've got a thing called Love on there, which isn't really a gospel song. Spiritual maybe, but not really gospel. So you could have something like Miracle of the Rosary could have been on that
Yeah,
instead of Elvis Now.
or even put your hand in the hand too. Yeah.
Exactly. But He Touched Me. What a way to open that album. I mean,
Mm,
the vocal is just absolutely astonishing.
yeah.
And I was just listening when I was listening to it when I was actually compiling this list together, and I was like, oh my goodness me. And I'm thinking sometimes when you haven't listened to a song for a while, as I hadn't listened to that for a while, suddenly you forget how good a song actually, how good
Yeah.
a song that actually is. And I think everything about. I think it's a great song to open the album with, because it sets if it's going to have a gospel album, that sets the tone absolutely perfectly. It's one of the better songs that he recorded for that album, and that together with a very Elvis in a contemplative mood on the front cover.
Mm,
I
mm.
still think the RCA could have done it a bit more, could have been a bit more adventurous with it. Again, you could go with that constantly through their 70s album covers.
Yeah.
Um, but I really do think it's a great way to open, and I think Elvis and the Imperials on that are just the way that I mean, honestly, you can tell the chemistry's there. Just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's a
Love
gorgeous song, and I'm one of the few, probably the minority, that I actually like. Think for me, "He Touched Me" is my favorite gospel album. I don't know. There's something I can't explain it. I have a special place in my heart for that album for some reason. You're right about "He Is My Everything." I never really enjoyed that song, but I thought the rest of the album is just breathtaking. And you're right, the way he starts off, just hearing those first few notes of the Imperials right away, and it's like you're immersed. You're just like
Yes.
immersed into it, and that was close on mine too, Leon. I almost put that on my top five. But listen, you can't go wrong with it. "He Touched Me" is just like you said. It's breathtaking. no
Yeah,
doubt.
it is. And what you've also got to remember as well is that you said something there about you don't know why it's your favorite, and I was having this discussion the other week with some of my Elvis friends, and I think what I said was, in fact, there was a post I made actually. I was on a website and a chat room, and what I'd actually mentioned was we're talking about favorite songs. And I said I spent a long time through my youth justifying why a song is a favourite. You can say that a song's your favourite because of the arrangement, because of the lyrics, because of the vocal, because of this, because of that. But at the end of the day, you can turn round to somebody and say it's my favourite song because it just is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm in the same boat with you, Leon. Like, obviously Aloha from Hawaii was my first that's the first thing I heard about from Elvis. And I was really dived into the 70s as a kid. So all those albums I heard were from the 70s were my first time hearing Elvis. Like you, I didn't really get into the 50s or early 60s until later on.
Mhm.
And so I don't have I've been appreciating it obviously a lot more now, especially. But the 70s always has a special place in my heart. I just think his voice
Mhm.
is fuller, and I just
Yeah,
love the way I love some of the pain in his voice and a lot of those songs. And
yeah,
so the 70s always has a special place in my heart. So any 70s song or album I'm into. So
yeah,
that's why he touched me is that's a great one.
yeah.
My number four really just rocks you right from the start. It's from the 1956 album Elvis. It's Rip It Up. I just love the way, and Little Richard did a version of it, obviously, where Little Richard wails on it, Elvis growls it, and it's just unbelievable the way he does this song. It's got everything. He brings like a rockabilly treatment to the song, where where Little Richard had a little bit more of a soulful R&B feel to the song. But this song is I mean, there's so many adjectives to it. It's magnificent. It's catchy. It's fun. It's dynamic. It's groovy. I think his song of this is brilliant. Obviously I love Ready Teddy, that too, that version that he does as well. But I just thought as a kickstart to this album, especially in the 50s, I can only imagine growing up in the 50s, hearing that Rip It Up from the first time on that song, you're like, what is this? Like, so that's why to me, Rip It Up is what I would say one of my top 3 or 4 50s rock and roll songs is this song here. I love Rip It Up.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with Elvis in the 50s. I
Yeah.
mean, let's be honest, you can't. And that album, just from start to finish, is just, and it has it definitely, it's rightfully um honoured. It's rightfully given a status that it absolutely deserves.
Mhm.
Sometimes, though, to the detriment of what Elvis did later in his career, because there's far too many people who think that that album should have been replicated all the way through Elvis's career, and that his music should never have evolved.
Right.
As you, which is a strange kind of paradox, if the truth be told. It seems that I was reading Shane Brown's book, a listener's guide. It was actually the second one, the Reconsider Baby one, where he goes a bit deeper into each of the songs recording sessions. But what he also does is round each year, after concert tours and albums, he gives a selection of some of what the critics had said in the newspapers at the time. And constantly there seemed to be critics always was the same thing, always referring back to the 50s.
Right.
But I think what his conclusion was, what these people were actually missing was that the fact that they were growing up and didn't like it, and the fact that Elvis's musical taste and what his output was also becoming more mature, and they didn't like that because it was basically making them more aware of the fact that they were leaving their youth behind.
That's a great point.
So,
Yeah.
so I think with that, definitely, I think that's what in fact, not just that album, but any of the albums in the 50s almost have the same sort of, if you can say, ring around their neck, if you get my point, because it kind of drags the rest of Elvis's career down a little bit because that output is so good.
Hmm.
It's basically in all those people's eyes what Elvis made Elvis, and he should have kept doing it. I mean, I'll give you an example of something I cite quite often. So Bob Geldof of the Boomtown Rats,
Yeah, sure.
he made a statement. There was a program that was produced by over here by the BBC over here in the UK, and he was one of the contributors, and he said he made a comment about Wooden Heart. He said, "What is this guff?" He says, and I don't listen to anything before anything from up to after 90, basically after Elvis went into the army.
Right.
And then of course you've got John Lennon's quote as well, but Elvis dying when went into the army, and going,
I know.
this doesn't help.
No, it
That
doesn't.
that doesn't help when there is such a massive big body of work after that. The 50s should be quite the 50s. I mean, that 50s Masters box set when it came out in what 1992,
You,
I think it
yeah.
was. Yeah, was I mean, wow, what a revelation! Everything's been remastered. Everything was in chronological order, and there was a few things that we'd never heard before. My goodness me, that box quite rightly won all the awards that it deserved because the body of work on it is superb. But it shouldn't be revered at the detriment of the rest of Elvis's
Right.
catalogue.
Yeah, you're right.
That's the important thing.
Yeah, the 50s should be revered in the
Yeah.
way it should be, but it shouldn't take away from what he did, in the Nashville sessions or in late 60s and early 70s. But
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about this, Leon. Like, I feel like the narrative has changed a little bit recently. Like, I go back and read reviews that are currently going on, and it seems like his 70s stuff is getting a little bit more love these days than it did back when the album first came out. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's something I will expand upon when I get to my number one choice because because if I speak my mind about what I think about that right now, Michael, I will go off on a tangent and I
Good.
will spoil what I want to say about my
Okay,
number
great. I
one
can't I
choice.
can't
Okay.
wait. I can't wait. All right, so let's get
Yeah.
to number three. What we got at number three?
Well, at number three, we've got a song you've already mentioned, which is "Inherit the Wind."
Yeah.
Um, "Inherit the Wind" it's not the greatest song on Back in Memphis by A Million Miles, not. And I actually prefer, now this might be some sort of Elvis heresy, I don't know, but I prefer Back in Memphis to From Elvis in Memphis. I think the album flows better. I think the songs are more of a similar type. I think from Elvis in Memphis is a great album. Don't misunderstand me on that. But it skips from one style to another, to another, to another, and it doesn't quite have the same flow on it. Every track is fantastic on it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't quite have the same flow. But the reason I picked Inherit the Wind, apart from the fact that I genuinely do like the song, I think it gives Elvis in that now more mature narrative. It's a song with lyrics that he probably wouldn't have used even mid 60s.
Right.
Because it's basically talking about just coming. I can't stay here because it's just not my nature, and I don't think the teenage kids would have understood or bought into that sort of song, and definitely not in the 50s, and certainly not in the early 60s. But the reason it holds a special place in my heart is because Back in Memphis was the first compact disc that my dad ever bought me out with Christmases or birthdays. He just took me into the record store. Now he'd
Wow.
been talking to me about things like A Little Bit of Green, and he was talking about a couple of other tracks on. I think and the grass won't pay no mind. I think, but my
Hmm.
dad he really likes A Little Bit of Green actually. And we were on the car into the city centre to go to the record shop, and he was talking about it, and I went, "Oh, okay." This wasn't long after that my dad had realised that my dad and I had suddenly, because for a long time I was a bit embarrassed to tell my dad I was a Elvis fan, but this was not long after we sort of finally came to the point where I could openly talk to my dad about Elvis, and we were in and RCA and started the Elvis in the 90s series where they were bringing out all the regular albums remastered and onto compact disc. So although Back in Memphis was released originally as a double vinyl set with In Person, those two
Yep.
were released separately in compact disc. So my dad went in and we were talking about it, and he'll have to lift it up, and he went, "A Little Bit of Green's on this album, blah blah blah." And I went, "All right, okay." He says, "Do you want it?" And I went, and I thought he caught me a little bit by surprise. I thought he was in to buy something for himself, and I went, yeah, okay. Now, in hindsight, I would probably say, no, I'd rather have this.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I took it and I went home and I put it in, and I put headphones on, and what caught me is you can hear that counting at the start of Head at the Wind. You can hear the counting.
Yes.
I went, wow, because I'd never heard, although it'd been played before, you couldn't have heard it. It was in the headphones when you could hear it, and I went, oh wow, I really do like that. So if I was going to pick one from the two albums, I think obviously I had the chance of wearing that Loved On Look from Elvis's Memphis or Inherit the Wind. And as much as I like wearing that Loved On Look, I think I prefer, if I was going to put one of the two on to listen to, I would put the Inherit the Wind on. And then, of course, when the Collector's Gold set came out in 1991, we finally got the
Live
only
version.
live rendition,
Yeah.
which is good in its own way,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
it's not in the same class
No.
as the studio version. But
No,
again,
no.
much as we said, you can't go wrong with anything from the 50s. You can virtually say the same thing from just about anything from American Sound.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. That's my favorite period. And like I said before, Inherit the Wind's one of my favorite songs. I just feel like Inherit the Wind, you could put that song on any place in that album and it would work.
Yeah,
That's how much I love this song. So,
yeah.
but you're right. It's a different type of Elvis. And you mentioned, I think even in That's the Way It Is, like when he was doing songs like 20 Days and 20 Nights, like you can feel there's a difference here from him singing, Hound Dog and Teddy Bear. He's getting into an adult conversation here.
Yeah.
So it really did start with that American Sound sessions because like stuff like Inherit the Wind and Do You Know Who I Am and just tremendous tracks. And you're right, Elvis is back in Memphis is from Elvis in Memphis is probably my favorite. But boy, back in Memphis is just right there with it for me. I mean, you could go 1A, 1B for me. Those songs are great. And you're right. I love the way that album flows too. It's just it goes in from one track into another just beautifully and just I love Inherit the Wind, but like I said, I think you could put that song anywhere. You could put that at the last track and it would work. That's how much I love the song. So
Yeah.
all right. So my number three, this is where I'm going to contradict myself a little bit. I always love, obviously, albums that start off rocking and get myself going. This one does not do that. That is from 1976 album from Elvis Presley Boulevard, Memphis, Tennessee. Hurt. I love that Hurt. Just it blew me away as a kid, Leon. Like just that operatic tone he set right from the beginning it blew me away. I couldn't believe his voice in that song. I mean, I've heard singers say not a lot of people can do what he did in that song with his voice. I mean, there's a point, and I think 51 seconds into that song where he does a there's something with his voice that he does there is just incredible. I know it's like with 2 minutes and 8 seconds. That song is very short, and he does some great live versions of this song. But to me, that recording version that he does, it just blew me away. That first note he hits right from the beginning, just like whoa, you're standing up like, all right, what's going on here? And like I said, I love rock songs, but the way he starts off that album, and it's a depressing album but the way he
Mm-hmm.
starts out that album, and you can feel the hurt in his voice and his tone, just the pain, and I absolutely love that song, and that's why it's my number three.
I think the first time I heard Heart was when I first heard Elvis in concert, the album,
Hmm.
and that was the first one I ever heard. And I think when I heard the studio version, it was so different from that I think that it always felt to me that I preferred the live version to the studio version. So for that reason, I don't think it would have been fair to include that in my top five
Sure.
as good as it is. And the same thing, and ironically, the same thing is true for Kentucky Rain, because the live version from the 15th of February 1977, the 16th, sorry, dinner show, the one that was on the silver box set, was the
Yes.
first rendition of Kentucky Rain that I ever heard. And that's my favourite version of Kentucky Rain. Now that, which is quite surprising considering the studio rendition of Kentucky Rain is one of the best recordings Elvis ever made.
Yeah.
But personally, I just prefer that live version. But it's one of those things where you can't explain why it just is. But ironically, when Elvis started doing Hurt live, so the first time he did it was obviously Johnson City at the start of that March '76 tour. It's almost a carbon copy of the studio version. It was
Right.
only later that they started a bit more bombast came into it.
Yes.
And I think if I had heard that rendition first, then I think the studio version would have been higher in my estimation.
Gotcha.
Rather, but I think because I heard the '77 version, and the thing about the '77 version, the Rapid City version that I like is actually it's not actually Elvis himself, it's the arrangement. It's when Elvis slows the song down and you hear that brass in the background.
Mm.
That really, I think the emotion comes from that. I think there's something because that brass is just perfect on that. So it's not that I don't like Hurt,
Oh, of course.
because
Yeah.
I said, and by the way, I'll have to say, when I put First Take to the Master together for Hurt,
Yeah.
it was one of the most enjoyable ones I ever put together. It
I'm
was
sure.
fabulous. And then of course you've got that version 69, take 69 as well.
Yes.
Which is just, it's just, I don't even know how it came about. I don't know what they were doing, but everybody seems to be in on it.
Right.
Even Felton Jarvis seems to be in on it as well. It's just fabulous.
Yeah, I mentioned this. I did a rebuilding the collection on Moody Blue yesterday.
Oh, well, I saw it.
Yeah, thank you. And like I said in that episode, you get this narrative that Elvis was depressed and not really into it, and you hear some of those tracks, and like he is having a ball on
Yeah,
on those tracks. Would it
yeah,
be the Italian version of Moody Blue, or like you said, even the Hurt, and like it was so eye opening for me that, oh my God, Elvis is not depressed. He's actually he seems like in a very good mood and stuff like that. Not saying
yeah.
that there wasn't issues with him, whether it be health wise or maybe even some stuff going on in his personal life. But
Yeah.
to me, you didn't hear that during some of those outtakes.
I think it's the material more than
True.
Elvis himself. I think it's the
Yes. Good
material.
point.
I think Elvis was kind of hamstrung by two things. First of all, the range of the songs he had access to didn't help
True.
with this arrangement, with the Helen Range arrangement and all that sort of thing with as far as the Cumberland and Tom Diskin were concerned, and also the fact that if it had been Elvis just couldn't be bothered going to a recording studio, and he was also, and by the way, I have to say that I think by this point Elvis was entitled to this next bit I'm going to say. Elvis was recording what he wanted to record.
Right.
Now, whether fans wanted to accept that, well, the public wanted to accept that, well, I think Elvis had done his time.
Hmm.
He'd been in the business now for over 20 years. He'd done everything he had to do. If it was his career, if he wants to record that material, then that's entirely up to him.
Yeah, and especially after all the stuff that he went through with all the movie soundtracks too.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it was time for him to do, like you said, what he wanted to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great point. All right, we're close, Leon. What we gonna have at number two?
Number number two, we have to go back to the '60s and something for everybody. And there's always me.
Ah,
I This really wasn't ever going to be in any doubt, because I just think this Elvis's vocal again in this Floyd Kramer's piano, just absolutely magnificent.
hmm,
Now this is another song which had a strange journey in me as well, because I didn't like it when I first heard it.
interesting.
Well, but it's a skewed perception though, because when I was growing up in the '80s, and Elvis was a million miles away from being. In fact, it was, if anything, it was a taboo subject. You weren't allowed to be an Elvis fan in the '80s, especially a new one, especially a young one.
Yeah,
The media seemed, and the industry itself seemed to be embarrassed about the fact Elvis had died at 42 and '77, left his legacy behind. There was a void that nobody could fill,
mm,
and there seemed to be an embarrassment. So the press seemed to have a downer, and there was always negative stories about Elvis.
yeah,
And certainly my own peer groups themselves kind of looked at me with that kind of weird look when I was growing up. So I always tried to find songs, wrongly, because you shouldn't have this point of view, that I would want to play when I was with my peer group that I thought they might like.
Yeah,
rather than what I would like.
I know how
And
you
if you think
feel.
of, exactly, Michael, and if you think about the way There's Always Me starts, it's a very classical start to it. It's not going to be a rocker. It doesn't even feel as if it's going to be a power ballad. Although it is kind of a
It
power
is.
ballad.
Yeah,
He
you're right.
finishes it, but it doesn't. But that piano, kind of classical piano intro, doesn't really come across like that. Like it's going to be the type of song it is. And I don't think that when you're fighting against the tide, it always felt to me not the sort of song that could convince people to listen to it with Elvis along with you. But as I got a couple of smacks on the head to give me a bit of sense, and as I grew older and actually was looking at things properly, I suddenly became the appreciation of how fantastic a song There's Always Me is. I think the song itself, the lyrics are fantastic.
Mhm.
I think Elvis goes into what I always say it was his best, which is storytelling mode.
Yes.
Um, and he said, look, and it's one of it kind of hints, it's a kind of wink and a nudge towards that more mature material that we're talking about, because
Good point.
and it leads also into the same sort of subject maybe as it hurts me, where regardless of what happens, I'll always be here. But then it kind of got ruined a bit for me when the RPO, the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra project
Yeah.
came about, and they almost ruined the song for me, because the whole point of that song is that piano build up, that the classical build up that I decried in the 80s or in the early 90s, is the part of the Jewel in the Crown where their song that builds up, and then they put in this
I
horrible
know.
orchestration at the start, and now what I will say is when I put First Take to the Master of this together, again, fabulous. Oh, fabulous. But with all First Take to the Masters, if there is an RPO version, I will put it in, because just because I don't like it isn't
Right.
fair to
Some other
put it
me
in.
might. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And it's whether we like it or not, the RPO is now canon.
Yeah.
It's a Sony legacy release, whatever. So those renditions have to be included. But my God, they almost spoiled that song for me.
Yeah. Is there not to get off subject here? Is there one song that RPO did that you didn't mind or you liked or thought was okay?
Eh, right. So remember, the bar's not very high here.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I think maybe just on the line of getting a pass would be I've Got a Thing About You, Baby, where at least they tried to do something different.
Right.
They tried to make it original.
Okay.
They tried to funk it up a little bit, that different arrangement, rather than just layer straight an orchestral arrangement onto the back of the original track. At least they tried to do something a bit different there.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that's only a tiny bit close to
I
close to
know it's
it.
hard. Yeah, if I had to choose one, I think it might be maybe one of the Christmas songs. I can't even think of which one it is, but yeah, when I first heard that, like I was actually kind of excited, thinking, oh, this could be something different, and just like, what am I listening to? Like, I want to go back and to hear the original now. I don't want to hear this anymore. So I think I heard those albums maybe one, maybe two times in my life, and I've
Yeah.
not gone back since. It's
There
hard.
is there is one that could have got a pass, which is the duet between Elvis and Elaine Fisher.
Yes,
Now, had they did that with the original track,
right.
because I think Elaine Fisher and Elvis's voice, I think they're
Yeah, it was
great together.
good. Yeah.
But I think the fact that they used the RPO version is what turned me off. It Had they did that with Elvis's original master, then I think we could have had something very special there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, back to There's Always Me. I mean, I that song is just gorgeous. I love the build of it. It kind of starts off so soft, like you said, with the piano, and even his Elvis's voice is so soft, and then it just kind of builds until that crescendo at the end, and just yeah, it's a gorgeous song, and I love that album so much. And but again, I think that's a song you can put anywhere. It just works. It's just a great tune. But I absolutely love that song. It's a great one. My number two is from my favorite 1970s album, and that is Promised Land. I absolutely love this song. I love the way it starts. I think his version just blows Chuck Berry's away, in my personal opinion. I think it's the perfect song, especially for the TCB band. I think the way James Burton plays guitar, the way Ronnie Tutt on drums. I just think it meshes just so perfectly together. I just love the way that album starts off. I love that album because I'm not comparing it to From Elvis in Memphis, but in a way, it's got a bunch of like it goes from rock to gospel to
Mhm.
country, so it's
Yeah.
kind of like all over the place in that sense. I just love the way it starts. I always loved when Elvis did rockers in the 70s because those were few and far between sometimes, especially in those mid to late 70s. So where it would be this one or TROUBLE, I just love the way he starts off those albums. But Promised Land's always been one of probably my favorite 70s album. And I just love the way he does that song. And just my favorite part of that song is when you hear him in the background saying, "All right, let's get it." And then all of a sudden they're rocking into it. So
Yeah.
Promised Land to me is my number two. I just love that song so much. And of course, it's on the Men in Black soundtrack, so
Yes.
which I love.
The 8 track get into it.
Right,
The eight
right.
track, the 8 track.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. Um, you know, I absolutely love that Promised Land album as well. In fact, there's a Honky Tonk Angel was actually one of my top 10 all time favorite Elvis
Wow.
songs. But the reason that I wouldn't choose Promised Land in my top five, and this is probably one of the drawbacks, and I use that word advisedly because it doesn't really feel like a drawback. And what I do as a hobby is that some of the earlier takes are better than the master, and Elvis's voice is better. I think his voice has started to thin out a little bit, but they got to that one. But that's just the nature of the recording
Yeah.
process. But I think that I think it might have been take two or take three where they seem to have absolutely nailed it. And then this version, and by the way, we're talking about the width of a piece of paper of difference between the two.
Right.
So we're not talking about a massive fall off in quality between the takes.
Where,
But
where
I
can
just
where can you find Take Three? I mean, outside your
it's on
channel.
you can find it on First Take to the Mass, and I think you'll find it on the promise. I think on the Follow That Dream rendition or rendition. Excuse me.
Is it on the classic album series?
Yeah, I think it is, and I think it is. If not, that obviously there is a or I can't get my words out now. A plethora of yeah. But it's on the Take Two is on the For That Dream album. In fact, that's the only way you'll find it unedited. There's a false start before it.
Okay.
So if you listen to that, you'll see that it's actually probably it's just a slightly better rendition. By the way, it's all down to personal opinion, of course, because
Yeah, I mean, listen, we haven't agreed on one thing yet. So
yes,
I always thought Promised Land could have been a starter for Elvis even in concert. Like I thought I read somewhere that there was talk of Promised Land replacing CC Rider, but of course that never materialized. I don't know
yeah,
where I read that before, but I could have
yeah,
swore I read that there was talk of it.
yeah. It would have made sense. It would have made sense. In fact, to be honest, I think Promised Land would have been a far better choice than Big Boss Man.
Yes, agreed.
Because I think Big Boss Man only always did that on that famous 19th of August 1974 opening show with the revised set list. It doesn't have quite the same bounce with Elvis coming onto stage. Promised Land, I mean, that would have been just. I mean, that would just have been fantastic as an
Yeah.
opener. It really would have been. And apart from anything else, it would also have given James Burton his solo just the same as he had with That's All Right and of course with CC Rider. But it is what it is.
Yeah. All right. I'm ready for the Leon diatribe. We're here at number one. What we got?
Right. So anybody that knows me, this will come as absolutely no surprise. Now, if you remember what I spoke about in the intro about where my
I
journey
know what number one
began,
is.
yeah, it's got to be I Just Can't Help Believing, which I think is probably not only is it's my all time favorite Elvis track.
Right.
Period. It just is. It's not just top of this list. It's my all time favorite Elvis track. Probably for a few reasons. First of all, simply opens my favorite Elvis album. This is something I'm going to be the Brent and I have discussed as well. But the fact that we both agree, there's not a lot. We've not an awful lot of things we do agree completely on. We agree on this. I think that's the way it is. It's not only, in my opinion, Elvis's best album. I think it's probably one of the best albums of all time. I think the way it's put together, the combination of live tracks and studio ones, I think the way that the songs have been overdubbed are fantastic, and
Yeah.
that's not always the case in the 70s. If you listen to songs like 20 Days and 20 Nights, again, another one in my top 10, the female voices and the orchestra complement Elvis rather than either obstruct his voice or overpower his voice. I think it's absolutely perfect, and it's that almost all the way through. But however, focusing on I Just Can't Help Believing itself, how many artists can pull off a phenomenal recording like that in a live environment where it's just flawless, and it's not just Elvis that's flawless. The backing vocals are flawless. The orchestra's flawless. The TC band are flawless. They all the stars seem to align at the same point in that. It is much to my chagrin that the re-edited version of That's the Way It Is omitted this song.
Yeah.
Now, in the original movie, it was a plot line all the way through, where they were struggling with the song, and you saw it in the rehearsal in Culver City. You then saw him in the dressing room before trying to remember the words, and that goes as far as into the 11th of August 1970 dinner show, the RC Live Master, where Elvis even has to get the lyric sheet, and there's a little bit of laugh at it, and he throws that down after the first verse. But then, with the reprise of the second verse, he gets the lyrics wrong, turns to the Sweet Inspirations, has a chuckle, and just keeps going, which to me only added to the narrative of that particular movie, because it shows, whereas Elvis didn't make a mistake in the opening show, he did in that one, and it fitted the narrative all the way through, because it showed that Elvis was still unsure, but was still able to pull off just such a flawless vocal, flawless rendition, and even his mistake didn't faze him. Now, I did say that I was keeping my powder dry about something we spoke about earlier about the critics. One of Elsie's most outspoken critics through the year was Albert Goldman, from the New York Times, and he'd been constantly critical. And then when That's the Way It Is came out, the album, we're talking about the album, in 1970, and I am paraphrasing here, but the quote went something along the lines of, if Elvis had decided to star in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, there would surely have been a place for I Just Can't Help Believing in that play. Which to me is just an utterly ridiculous comment.
Oh
And
my
the
God.
reason I mention that, apart from highlighting how blinkered and basically already prejudiced that Albert Goldman was in his critical analysis of Elvis at that period. If you look at the same publication, the New York Times, when the deluxe edition of That's the Way It Is came out in 2014, they describe it almost in the same way that I did, as one of the best albums of all time. It showcases Elvis in perfect voice, everything about it, and it's good to see that album is now given its rightful place within the music industry itself and music critics alike. Now, it's good to see actually appreciated like that. And I think anybody hearing the Elvis That's the Way It Is album would not come away from it not having an appreciation for Elvis whatsoever.
Right.
I think it's the only album in the 70s where you would get that, because every song start to finish is like that. There's no weak spot in it.
No.
Other albums will maybe have other genres within it that people might not take to. You know, for example, if you want to hear Elvis and you hear a gospel song, then it might turn you away. Or if you go further into the 70s, even 75, Elvis today, an awful lot of country stuff on there, might not be what you like. Or 77, where it's all those kind of downbeat ballads,
right?
You know, where it might turn you off. But at least That's the Way It Is has a bit of everything, much the same as the American Sound album. So that is the reasons that I think why I love both I Just Can't Help Believing and That's the Way It Is album. And honestly, Michael, from the minute that you suggested this, as much as there may have been a bit of conflict with the rest of the list, This one was never in any doubt.
I knew when I made this list, I knew that this was going to be your number one. There was no doubt about it. Just from watching your videos.
Yeah.
It's funny what I just can't believe it, and that's the way it is for me. I watched the concert and I didn't get the album until later on for some reason. It was weird. So I used to watch this all the time because I loved, obviously all the performances he did, but I didn't appreciate really I Just Can't Believe. And I mean, when I got the album, I liked it. But when I started watching your channel and the way you broke down that song, now I love it more than I did 10, 15 years ago. Because you made a great point on one of those specials where you said there was a part where a lot of times you think it's the end of the song in the middle of that song, and a lot of the audience would clap. But at that moment in that performance, everybody's just so quiet and just waiting for him to do, all right, what's next? The song, they were so immersed into the song because of how great he was doing
Mhm.
that it was just unbelievable the way he did it. And like I said, it's not my top five. It was my number six. Uh, but there's no, I love this song so much because of what you've taught me about the song. But I didn't, like I said, I watched That's the Way It Is so many times before I got the album. So in my brain, I just thought of I Just Can't Believe in the middle of a concert. So when I first heard it for the first time as a opening track, I'm like, okay, like I didn't expect it to be like an opening track. It was weird.
Yes.
So, but now that I hear it, just it's the perfect way to open up that album. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the perfect song for that. I mean, yeah, I think Brent even said it in his review that yeah, maybe you could patch it up to kind of like work, kind of open with like a little bit of a frenzy of a song, but to me, I just can't believe it's the perfect song for that album to open
Yeah.
up with.
Yeah.
So, all right. So my number one is from my favorite album. It's from Elvis in Memphis, and that's Wearing That Loved On Look. I just love the way it starts. Obviously, just coming back from the '68 comeback special, it just sounded different. I mean, I'm sure, especially back then, there were, after all the movies and all the stuff that he had done, and now you're getting this track where it's like it's raw, even though it's got a little bit of a gospel flavor, but the words are not so much gospel at all. Um, and his voice is just growling. It sounds so great. I just love that the piano in the middle of that song. Um, to me, it's a 5-star song. I love the album, but that song, it's like, all right, guys, you got the soundtracks, you got what the '68 comeback special, but now here I am, I'm ready to go. And then just to me, it's one of my favorite songs. It's my favorite opening track. It reminds me a kind of little bit of what he did with in the '50s with Jailhouse Rock and even like Santa Claus is Back in Town. Just that growl. I just love the way he growls finally on these rock songs. And to me, it's the perfect way to open up that album because it's like, hey guys, I'm back and I'm here to stay.
Yeah, he definitely has that growl in it as well, but he also has that, he always had that kind of bit of his vocal where you could hear it. It was like a kind of plea bit, a kind of cry. And
Yes.
but he also does that in there, but it does. But normally he would do that in a song which is maybe a sort of power ballad, but he uses it to great effect in that as well. But you can see he's so immersed because he actually starts to join in the shoop shoops as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
as well. So you can see that he's right immersed in that. And I think the lyrics are fabulous as well. The
Yeah.
lyrics are
I
absolutely
just love the
brilliant.
way he says, like, even in the beginning, it's like almost like he's telling the audience, hey, I had to leave town for a little while, but now I'm back and you're getting the Elvis you remembered. It's like
Yeah,
I just love the way that album just starts off. So yeah, I
yeah,
love it.
yeah.
So
I,
what's your top five opening tracks on Elvis albums? Give me a comment down below. It's funny because you asked me like, what albums are we doing it for? Because like I even thought about that too. I'm like, should we do like I didn't know to do compilation albums like the Golden Records. I did
mhm,
put that in my mind, but I didn't put any of those on there. Like yeah, I
mhm,
could have put It's Now or Never, or I could have
yeah,
put, I Need Your Love, I Need Your Love Tonight, but I stayed away from it. But to me, those aren't compilation albums. To me, they are compilation albums, but to me, they're still Elvis original albums. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
Those
yeah,
golden records?
yeah, absolutely. Because
Yeah.
if you think about the golden records as well, there's a lot of tracks that were on the golden records that weren't actually on regular albums anyway.
Right.
That definitely makes sense. And I was just because I was looking at it and I'm wondering, right, so does this include maybe Follow That Dream albums where there are maybe tracks that are in a different order, or things like Our Memories of Elvis and
Right.
so on and so forth? And I'm thinking, right, so I said I'll need to ask Michael because
Yeah.
I don't want to be here and I've got a list with
Yeah,
songs.
yeah, I know. I wanted to do just when he was alive, kind of from
Yeah,
56 to 77. So, but it
yeah.
was hard because like I said, wait, do I conclude the golden records? Do I include the Sun sessions that he did that they put out in 76? Do I put a legendary performer volume one? Like so it was hard. So, but
You've got to draw the line you've got to draw the line somewhere.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
But
yeah.
Leon, thank you so much for joining me
Oh,
today.
my
I
pleasure,
really
Michael.
appreciate it. Hope we could do something else in the future.
Oh,
This
absolutely.
this has been Top of the Hops. I'm Mike Riker, and always remember TCB. Thank you, guys.